When a country has issued its very first postage stamp, it has often been an important symbol of its independence, and usually comes with an interesting story. Latvia's very first postage stamp is particularly special in that it's uniquely tied to the fascinating and complicated history of Latvia. The country declared its independence in the aftermath of World War I, and due to a shortage of paper, printed its very first postage stamps on the back of German military maps. Not only can you still see these maps on the back of those stamps today, but you can also own them and own an important part of Latvia's history. So let's explore Latvia's very interesting first postage stamps in this episode of #Philately. Latvia is a country in the Baltic region of Northern Europe and is referred to as one of the Baltic states, being alongside Estonia and Lithuania. It's important to understand where Latvia is, and this will give you some clue as to what its history was like. For centuries, the area was under German, Swedish, Polish, Lithuanian, and Russian rule. From the end of the 18th century, it was under Russian rule until the First World War. World War I heavily impacted Latvia. The Eastern Front line had advanced through the area, leaving much of the country devastated. But with Germany losing the war and Russia being completely distracted by the Bolshevik Revolution, there was a power vacuum, an opportunity that Latvians took very quickly. Latvia proclaimed its independence on the 18th of November 1918, just 1 week after the First World War had ended. Now, 2 months earlier in September, before Latvia declares its independence and before World War I comes to an end, an order gets placed for the printing of 3 million postage stamps. What better way to show your independence than the issuing of your very own stamps? Well, I'm sure today there's a better way, but issuing stamps featuring your own imagery and identity have been a key part of a country's claim of independence. As philatelists will know, stamps are a symbol of sovereignty. And so a Latvian artist by the name of Ansis Siros, who had just designed the modern version of the Latvian national flag, put together a design for what will be the first Latvian postage stamp. At a value of 5 kopeki, these stamps feature a rising sun with a rectangular frame. 5 would be sufficient for local and international postcards, while 2 stamps would satisfy the rate for a local letter, and so on. The sun symbolized the birth and development of a new Latvian state, and has 3 ears of grain with a ring around the stalks in the center. There are 3 stars in the sun's rays that represent 3 historic regions of Latvia, which were together for much of Latvia's history. Vitsame, Latgale, and Kurzemezemgale, I think. The stamps were printed in red ink on cream-colored paper, somewhat symbolizing the colors of the Latvian flag, red and white. And of course, the feature that makes these stamps extremely unique is actually on the back of the stamp. When the stamps were ordered in September of 1918, there was a shortage of many things in war-torn Latvia, one of which was paper, and so the Latvian Postal Administration chose to repurpose a stock of German maps that had been ordered, but were no longer going to be picked up. The maps were not yet finished, they were only printed on one side, and they had not yet been cut to size. And so the idea was to just turn them over and print the stamps on the other side. What were the maps displaying? Well, the area, most of Lithuania and southern and eastern Latvia. And there are a few variations of the maps. They could entirely be in black ink, or, such as these ones, have the contour lines in light brown ink, and you have to look very carefully for them. And if you are a geography nerd such as myself, you will find these maps really interesting. Well, though what I had to quickly learn is that if you're looking to identify a location on the map today, keep in mind that names of towns and cities do change, the names of towns and places on these maps are in German, and for some reason these German maps were not using Greenwich for the prime meridian, longitude 0. If you are plugging the German map coordinates into Google Maps, for example, you'll likely be placed somewhere in Russia. That is because the maps seem to use the most westerly point of continental Africa, Dakar, Senegal, as the prime meridian, which puts any of these German map coordinates about 17.5 degrees further east. I might have lost you there, but on another note, less geographic note, Latvia was also using these maps to wrap up fish at the fish market when selling it. So it's a pretty firm paper, and it made for ideal postage stamps. Due to the size of the maps, the stamps were laid out in 12 rows of 19 columns, making 228 stamps per sheet. Some were perforated and some imperforate, so you'll find both out there. And of the 3 million that were ordered, a total of 2.7 million were actually printed and were first available for purchase on December 18th, 1918, exactly 1 month after Latvia declared its independence. Now, the Latvians did not get their independence without a fight. Just days after declaring independence, the Soviets began to invade the country and captured Riga, the capital city, by January. It's a complicated conflict that involves the Soviets, the Latvian army, the Germans, as if World War I was not complicated enough. The Latvian War of Independence lasted until the signing of the Riga Peace Treaty in August of 1920. During this war, the stamps continued to be printed, although the government had to move out of the city of Riga when it was captured, and left the stamps and printing plates behind. So new plates were created with the same design, and different sources for paper were sought out and used. So no more map stamps. And right through into May of 1920, these stamps expanded to include denominations of 10, 15, right up to 75, each in different colors. If you're looking at Latvian stamps on Colnect or in another catalogue, you'll notice that they're issued from 1918 until 1940, when they just stopped being issued for 50 years until 1991. And that is because the Soviet Union reoccupied Latvia during the Second World War, and so Latvia became the Latvian Soviet Socialist Republic and used USSR stamps right through 1990, when it eventually restored its independence as the USSR was collapsing. What's interesting is that while researching this video, I found numerous articles referring to Latvia as a dead country when it comes to stamps. A dead country is a country or entity that no longer issues stamps, as it was during its time in the Soviet Union. It was no longer issuing stamps of Latvia and had to use USSR stamps. It's an interesting case in philately where a dead country comes back to life, as did several other former Soviet states. And so you have a dead country now issuing stamps again under its own name in 1991. Today, Latvia is a proud issuer of colorful and interesting stamps that celebrate the country's history, sports, landscapes, and animals. In 2018, they issued a stamp commemorating the 100th anniversary of the first Latvian stamp, as well as a stamp commemorating its designer, the artist Anzis Siros. The original 1918 stamps are easy to get a hold of. They are affordable and are usually found in mint condition, as they were only used prior to the Soviet invasion. You can actually buy a full sheet that has not yet been broken up and have the entirety of a German military topographical map from World War I. It is only the 5 denomination stamps that were issued in 1918 that have the map on the back, and depending on where in the sheet the stamp was printed, you could have a blank backing, a simple line, or an intense display of topography. Finding them on cover is far less common, as the stamps were primarily used in a 14-day window from the 18th of December to the 1st or 2nd of January, when the government had to evacuate Riga from the Soviet invasion, but they have been found on covers from other cities, although much rarer. You can literally own and study a piece of World War I and Latvian history with these stamps. They symbolize a country being born on the ruins of the First World War. Actually, that's exactly what they are. They're printed on the back of war scraps that were left behind. It's poetic, and it's real. It's not a gimmick. There was a shortage of paper, and these stamps were printed out of necessity. Collectors enjoy studying the different varieties of the issue, as well as the different maps. And I'm going to guess that there must have been or is someone out there that is trying to piece together a full map using singles and blocks that they come across. If you're into extreme puzzle building challenges, maybe give this one a go. Anyway, I've included a number of interesting links to learn more about Latvia's history, as well as more about these stamps in the video description, so check them out. As always, thank you for watching and happy exploring.